Before we get started, I just wanted to make a quick announcement to let you know that the game featured in this video is the first early access build of Half Dead 3, which has just been made available on Steam, and is the latest release in one of my favorite game series of the past several years. I haven't really played enough of this yet to say whether or not I would quote-unquote recommend it, but as a big fan of the series, I wanted to give you guys a little look at it as I take a few minutes to explain the most recent big change to the channel, which is currently in progress. So, without further ado, let's get this party started. Hey everybody, it's time for a channel update. And no, you're not hearing things, this is actually happening. After well over 2 years, I've finally decided to do another one of these things. Mostly because of the fact that I recently chose to bring the long-running Why It's Awesome series to a close here on the channel and replace it with a new show, which will be premiering tomorrow, by the way. And I wanted to take a few minutes to explain at least some of the reasons why I decided to do that. So, I've been a big, vocal proponent and advocate of video games as art for a very long time now. And one of my big motivations for the way that I tend to talk about and cover games here on the channel has always been the idea of really reinforcing that they can stand toe-to-toe with any other form of artistic expression in terms of their meaning and value and impact. But one thing that I've become sort of conscientious of in the past few years in particular is that the sort of final step in doing that is to create a show that doesn't simply focus on video games, but focuses on them in addition to those other mediums. And I think in a lot of ways, we finally reached a point where something like that is truly viable in a way that perhaps it wouldn't have been, say, 5 or 10 or more years ago. The fact of the matter is, I love video games, always have and always will, but I also really love music and books and films and television shows and poetry and all sorts of other creative manifestations. And if I'm being completely honest about it, I was starting to feel a bit limited by the scope of the Why It's Awesome series, exclusively focusing on video game content. I definitely feel that there was a time, perhaps even as recently as 10 years ago, where video games really needed a little extra lift and a little extra push and a little extra oomph behind them to really help convince people that they could and should be taken as seriously as those other mediums are. But I'm happy to say that I really don't believe that's the case anymore. And so I find myself increasingly questioning what the value of a channel and a show that exclusively concentrates on covering video games actually is. Now, I know there are some people, YouTube included, who aren't going to be happy about this change, because the sort of conventional wisdom about YouTube channels is that they're supposed to focus on a very specific, particular topic and grind out content as quickly as possible to keep the audience hooked. But the bottom line for me with YouTube has always been that it's more about having fun and doing things that I enjoy than trying to please the algorithm gods or monetize the content that I put out here or any of that sort of stuff. Not to take away from the tremendous amount of effort that other people put into their YouTube channels to do those sorts of things, but simply to acknowledge that that's not really something that I'm particularly interested in doing. To me, this channel has always just been about featuring my creative works and occasionally featuring other people's creative works that I find interesting or compelling or otherwise noteworthy. I believe a big part of the reason why this channel's been able to persist and grow is the fact that I always do what I believe is best for it, regardless of whatever money or opportunities that might leave on the table. Another thing that I'm really keen to avoid with the new series moving forward is the idea of doing quote-unquote reviews for the things that I cover. as I feel pretty strongly that there are certain connotations and expectations that can and should come with a quote-unquote review. And the more I thought about it, the more strongly I felt that it was a really critical and vital component of what I was trying to do with this change. So much so that I've actually decided to simply call the new series Recommended, as it will be featuring things that I simply recommend. Not necessarily because of any purely objective or empirical analysis of them, but for reasons that I will state in each individual episode. Having said all that, I'm sure that there will be some people who won't like the new show or won't like this change and may decide to unsubscribe to the channel as a result of it, as has been the case every time I've ended any of the series that I've done in the past. But as was the case in all of those instances, I really feel strongly that this is a change that I do need to make, both for my own personal fulfillment and the continued evolution and refinement of the channel. With all that said, I'm going to bring this video to a close. Hopefully you folks have enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. If you'd like to see more videos from me in the future, be sure to hit subscribe, and I will see you next time.